ACS shows majority of all women marry at least once. Let's stop right there, because I know y'all looking at that and like, well, media men, I've heard that so many times that 3 out of 4 black women will never marry. It's not true at all, okay? It has never been true. And you guys have never heard me repeat that talking point, but I'm addressing it now. The truth of the matter is women of all races will marry at least once. This is me clearing up something for black women. So it's not true that 3 out of 4 black women will never marry. 29% of black women are married. And I know there's going to be a Poindexter in the chat. Well, that's only 4% media men. 54% of black men have never fathered a child. But if you take away the 4% of that bumps it down to 50%. Now you leave the door open for the black community to say, well, half the black men are fathers and half of them don't take care of their kids. You see how important that 4% was? And now it goes to 54% of black men have never fathered a child to 46% of black men who have ever fathered a child, which would debunk the fact that black men are deadbeats. Because for one, the majority of black men don't even have a child. That's how important 4% is. So when I give black women 4% from 25% to 29%, it matters, especially when you're talking about statistics, okay? Data literacy for the real world. How to read statistics in black community conversations. Why most people get stats wrong. It's a mindset problem. So viral stats, as you guys just saw, they lack context. People confuse snapshots with trends, which is what I just mentioned with the prison information. Most don't understand denominators, sample size, population. We're going to discuss that here in a second. Black community examples. I put those in here so we can make it a little bit more relatable. So 1 in 3 black men have a felony. You guys have heard this before, right? Lifetime risk, not current reality. And we're going to go over that here in a second. So 36% of black men are married. It's valid, but you must understand the categories, because what I've learned is that most disagreements online come from people not understanding statistical context. Context simply means the surrounding information that gives a statistic its real meaning. So without context, numbers become weapons. And you guys just saw that with the white guy and the comedian.
Y'all done ticked me off with this single mom BS.
The worst environment is for a kid to be raised in a single mother household.
Single mothers are literally the worst parents on the entire planet.
Women got to hold themselves accountable because 70% of boys in jail are raised by single mothers.
Single sisters are to blame for the high population of men in jail.
70% of youth in juvenile delinquent facilities come from single mother homes.
Compare a single mother is 80% chance of going to jail.
80% of black males who are in jail come from single mother homes.
70%, 80%. That statistic is 30 years old statistic. So it's also single fathers, kids who live with their grandparents, kids who live with their aunties, uncles. That's where that comes from. When you look at the real statistics, it's actually almost neck and neck, single parent households versus double parent households as far as men in prison.
The most deceptive example involves the white men who twisted the Department of Justice incarceration data to absolve single mothers of any connection to the backgrounds of incarcerated youth.
It only surveyed about 10% of juveniles, so while it might be indicative, it should not be taken as a concrete fact. Now, the statistics on inmates are actually fairly easy to get, thanks again to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. And in 2002, they showed that the number of offenders from single mother homes actually dropped from 41 to 39%, and went back up in 2016 to 41.1%. Meanwhile, homes with a father represented 40.7% of all offenders. It's almost neck and neck. Meanwhile, homes with a father represented 40.7% of all offenders.
Let me show you what he did here. This is the same study that he's referencing. If you add 35.5% of prisoners who live with both parents and 5.2% of father-only households, 40.7, which is the number he purposely told women to make it seem like the number was closer than it actually is. Let's do the same for women. If you add 41.1% and 35.5% Children that grew up with mothers have a 76.6% chance of going to prison, a 35.9% difference from mothers and fathers. He actually did that on purpose because our women are sharing this information because they thought that it would make black men look bad. However, y'all look worse because you believe this white man before you even fact check this information.
Why wasn't you watching? White man from town, why wasn't you watching?
In one viral case, a white man cherry-picked a portion of a DOJ chart merging both parents and father-only households to create a false equivalence that minimized the impact of single mother households. When the data is correctly analyzed, the majority of incarcerated individuals across all races come from mother-led homes, not father-led. But black women uncritically spread his misinformation because they preferred his narrative over the actual stats. So people react emotionally to percentages because they don't know what population is being measured, what the denominator represents, or how large the sample size was. They don't realize that a statistic can be technically true, yet totally misleading when stripped of its details. That's why so many myths spread in discussions about the black community, whether it's fatherhood, marriage, income, or crime. People are arguing with numbers they don't fully understand. All right? Here we go. So, snapshot versus trends. And we just went over this. I'm glad we had that example. So, snapshot equals right now. So, if we were to take a survey or a poll in this chat, that would be right now. A trend would be over time. So, let's say every time I do a live stream, we do a survey with the chat. And then we can come to a determination like, yes, this is the trend for this particular group, for Medium Men's Chat. So for an example, how I did the trend analysis with black men, the marriage percentages. So 36% of black men are married, and that was done in 2022. In 2024, 37%. 2026 to 2027, that is projected to go to 38 to 40%. So the snapshots fuel the myths, and then the trends reveal the truth. That is why black men's marriage rates are on the increase, okay? Because we have all the information. So when we look at the statistics, we have to distinguish between the snapshot versus trends. So like I said, a snapshot is that one data point, that 1 year or one survey. And most people, one moment. But a trend is what happens across many years, showing direction and patterns. So what I've learned in the black community, most information comes from treating a snapshot like it's a trend. So a good example would be someone will share a single year statistic about marriage or incarceration and act like it represents 50 years of behavior. You can't do that. But when you track the data over time, you often see a completely different story. It either increases, decreases, or stabilizes that a single year number can't reflect. So trends reveal the truth and snapshots provoke panic. All right? And that's how we need to start looking at it in the black community. Let's continue. So the 4 questions that you can use to fix 80% of bad stats, okay? And I want y'all to have this information for yourselves. Ask that person, what is the population? What is the denominator? What is the source? What is the time frame? So on and so forth. These 4 questions destroy most viral misinformation. So again, guys, in the chat, before accepting any statistic, to include the statistics that I share, I want you to ask these questions. Run it through, the checks first, because these 4 ideas give you more clarity than anything else. They will help you identify whether a data point is, relevant to the conversation. And then once you train your mind to evaluate numbers this way, most viral statistics immediately collapse because they cannot survive basic scrutiny. Okay? Which is what we just did. These 4 questions are the foundation of data literacy. These 4: population, denominator, source, time frame. Remember that. Screenshot it. Okay, so, and this is just some examples that I put together for you guys. We can take a look at it real quick. So, what is the population? Examples of the differences: all black adults. Are you taking it? Was this survey taken from all black adults, or was it only taken from black men ages 18 to 29, which is typically what I look at when I do the crime reports? If you guys remember that. So then, are you looking at only married people or the total population? Only formerly incarcerated are people who are currently incarcerated. And for the black community example, black men have the lowest marriage rate. If somebody says that, I've heard this before. False. When compared properly by gender and race, the lowest marriage rate belongs to black women. Okay? And black men are on the cusp of catching Hispanic men. All right? And then question number 2, what is the denominator? The denominator equals what the percentage is based on. So the example would be 83% of single mothers are black. That will be completely false because the actual denominator shows black single mothers are only 28% of the population. Now that's key because the numbers that I've been telling you guys in regards to 69.3%, that is of the black women who have actually had children. So if we know that 61% of black women have birthed a child, and of those 61%, 69.3% have had a child out of wedlock. But if you extrapolate that out to the total population, black women themselves only account for 28% of the single mothers, which means there are 72% of other single mothers that are white, Hispanic, and Asian, and other groups. Okay? So in that, right, that puts things into perspective of black women's single mother rates. But when you use the per capita, argument, if black women only account for 7% of the population, 7.5% of the population, but 28% account for 28% of all the single mothers, that looks bad. But when you look at the raw total numbers or percentage, it's 28%. So that's how you hear a lot of white people use per capita. This is what they're looking at. But if the difference is so large, for example, with white men committing the majority of violent crimes at 59.1%, they account for the most arrests. That number is so large in comparison to the black population and our numbers, then it's kind of minute to even mention per capita, okay? So another example would be 21% of married black men marry out. The denominator equals married men, not all men. So if I said that of the, how many black men is it in the workforce? It's about 15.2 million black men in the workforce. So if I told you that 21% of 15.2 million black men are married to, non-black women, that would be a large amount, okay? But it's not true because it's from the married black men. So if 36% of black men are married, of that 36%, 21% within that group are married to non-black women. 79% are married to black women, okay? So that's why, that's how you I guess get that figure. And then you have to ask, what is the source? And you guys always see me cite my sources. I put the references in APA format and in chronological order under all of my statistical videos, so I'll make it easier for you guys. So always check if it's from the CDC, Pew Research, ACS, BLS, DOJ, not blogs, TikTok, or advocacy posts. If the source is weak, the stat is weak. Question 4. What is the time frame? Time frame determines accuracy. So lifetime versus snapshot, 1990 versus 2024. Chance over lifetime versus current percentage of population. So in the black community, example would be 1 in 3 black men go to prison. Applies to a 2001 cohort, not today's black men. And we have to be very specific with this one. Okay, so module 3, biostatistics for regular people. And I tried to do this as simple as possible, man, because I didn't want to get too analytical. about this, but I think it's very easy to explain. So the basics matter: prevalence versus incidence, correlation versus causation, risk ratios, sample versus population, margins of error. This is the decoder ring for social media information. Okay, if you understand these, it is very simple to see who is BSing you and who's not. Okay, so to read the statistics confidently, you only need a few biostatistical concepts. So prevalence tells you how common something is at that specific moment. Okay, incidence tells you how many cases occur over time. Okay, correlation means two variables move together, while causation means one variable directly influences the other. Okay, let me say that one more time. So correlation means two variables move together, while causation means one variable directly influences the other. All right. So, and then also risk ratio compares the likelihood of an outcome between groups. And these concepts typically show up in nearly every public health or social statistic used in conversations about the Black community. All right. And I actually went over all of this. I mean, I just explained, but I don't want to, if you are, matter of fact, I'm here. I got time. So prevalence versus incident. Super important. Again, snapshot today, incidents, new events over time. And I just told you guys about that. So prevalence and incidents are often confused online because prevalence describes what is happening right now, such as the current involvement levels of Black fathers. Incidence describes the probability of an event happening at any point in someone's life, like incarceration. So a lifetime statistic cannot be used to describe present day conditions. When you separate these two ideas, many misleading claims immediately lose their power. This is one you have to master, especially on social media when you're dealing with false information. Okay, let's continue. All right, so correlation versus causation. All right, so correlation doesn't necessarily mean cause. So example would be ice cream sales and drownings. That's a classic example. Okay, Black women's degrees cause singleness. False. Black men marry out because they hate Black women. False. Correlation helps explain, not blame. All right. And I keep saying everything is super important, but this one is actually important as well, because a major source of misunderstanding comes from confusing correlation with causation. And correlation happens when two things, like I said, move together, but that doesn't automatically mean that one caused the other. And this typically happens when you talk about Black men marrying interracially. Okay. So causation means that there's a direct cause and effect relationship. In social data, many variables influence outcomes. So income, geography, age, education, timing, opportunity. And more recent one is personality, character, agreeableness, likability, all this type of stuff. It means a little bit more to Black men in regards to marriage and relationships now. Back in the day, there was a lot of Black men that were willing to accept the "take me as I am" mantra. Now they're rejecting it. Okay. So I think Black men in some cases, yes, I understand we still like a big booty and shit. You know what I'm saying? Looks is always going to trump everything. But back in the day, that was the only thing that matters for a lot of Black men. Now it's like, okay, she got a big booty and a pretty face. Can I rock with you? Are you agreeable? Are you nice? Do you listen to foolery on social media? And if none of those things align, there are more Black men walking away from that big booty. Okay? Good job, Black men. And I know y'all like to dibble in it. I know the game. Oh my God. We supposed to be serious here. All right. So when people treat correlation like causation, they create oversimplified explanations for complex issues. Is that plain and simple, guys and ladies? I'm sorry. Let's see here. Let's continue. Bang. So ratios made simple. Risk ratios. So Always ask compared to what baseline, how large is the sample, what groups are we comparing it against, and then the black community example would be black women have the highest divorce rate, and it depends on age, income, region, marriage timing, sample size. So all that needs to be factored in when we start doing or discussing risk ratios. It actually helps us understand how likely an outcome is for one group compared to the other. All right. So, and I think I want to use, now I'll wait to use that example because I have it covered, but it does show the relative probability, not a guaranteed result. So when I say that, if I say that black women or black men have black men have the highest divorce rates among all men, you have to start looking at everything else. What risk ratios do they have? Or you can ask, well, who do black men typically marry? And then if I say, well, black men typically marry black women, and then your next response would be what? Well, what is black women's divorce rate? Well, black women's divorce rate is the lowest amongst all races and genders. Oh, so now we have a correlation. You see how that works? So it's like, well, if black men have the highest divorce rates among all men, but they tend to marry the women that have the highest divorce rates among all races and genders, then the correlation and causation would be black women's high divorce rates. And also, like Ola just said, who is filing the most divorces? Well, on average, women initiate 73% of divorces. Well, can you break that down by age and race? Yes. Black women tend to file divorces at a higher rate than the average woman of 73%. So the correlation and causation to black men's high divorce rates is due to black women filing the most and, initiating divorce the most and having the highest divorce rates. That's how you just simply break down a topic. And the reason why I use that is because I see people saying that. And black women throwing it in the black men's face. You guys have the highest divorce rates. You guys just learned how correlation and causation works. All right. So let's continue. Let's see here. And then I think I have a 60-second that I was doing with one of my coworkers. This should work. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So the 60-second fact check, the 1-minute method. Who published it? Show me the table /source link. Who is the population? Does the number make sense? So the example would be, if 75% of women of color never marry, impossible. ACS shows majority of all women marry at least once. Let's stop right there, because I know y'all looking at that and like, well, media man, I've heard that so many times that 3 out of 4 black women will never marry. It's not true at all. Okay, it has never been true, and you guys have never heard me repeat that talking point, but I'm addressing it now. The truth of the matter is, women of all races will marry at least once. At least. Remember, second marriages work, the percentage of it working goes down. Third marriages, percentage of it goes down. So yes, this is actually me clearing up something for black women. So it's not true that 3 out of 4 black women will never marry. Because for one, you can look at the current statistics now. 29% of black women are married. And I know there's going to be a Poindexter in the chat. Well, that's only 4%, media man. What if I was to tell you that 54% of black men have never fathered a child? But if you take away the 4% of that breaks it down, that bumps it down to 50%. Now you leave the door open for the black community to say, well, half the black men are fathers and half of them don't take care of their kids. You see how important that 4% was? And now it goes to 54% of black men have never fathered a child to 46% of black men who have ever fathered a child, which would debunk the fact that black men are deadbeats. Okay? Because for one, the majority of black men don't even have a child. That's how important 4% is. So when I give black women 4% from 25% to 29%, it matters, especially when you're talking about statistics. Okay? We have margin of errors and all this type of stuff that factored in. It can go plus or minus. It matters. So to every black man, stop repeating that statistic. It's not true. Make sense? All right. All right. Did I clear it up? Any black men feel some type of way about that? I know it's popular, but it's not true. Like I said, I use a simple 1-minute process to test whether a statistic is legitimate, and I just gave it to you guys, a 60-second fact check. So I check if the claim names its source, whether the number aligns with the known population sizes, whether the denominator makes sense, and whether the time frame is current. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. All right. So if the claim fails any one of these checks, chat, it's unreliable. Most viral statistics collapse instantly once you run this quick audit. All right. All right. So there you go. You got my little quick method. This is how I use this 60-second fact check to determine that woman, Tiffany Calloway, was lying about 92% of black men who have children with white women. They leave them. They become single mothers. I use this 60-second fact check, and I should have introduced this a long time ago for you guys, but I didn't. So that's a failure on my behalf. So yeah. All right. All right. So let's go to population check and misuse. So race plus gender myth. So most misinformation about black men and women, it typically comes from misreading the population. You guys just saw that in real time. Using group data for individuals, mixing categories, i.e. both parents and single fathers, emotions, hatred, propaganda. Examples that I like to use: the crime stats misuse, the arrest data as if it represents the population. That's one that white folks like to use all the time. And again, a lot of misinformation spreads because data is applied to the wrong population. So people use arrest data to describe all black men, or apply marriage data for women to men, or combine groups with very different life circumstances. So this is what we call data misclassification, where people are placed in the categories they do not belong in. So, and this is why you have data analysis, okay? It inflates problems and leads to inaccurate portrayals of entire communities. That's why you got white folks sharing some picture about black men, responsible for 50% of the deletions and all this stuff. Y'all have heard this, the 50% narrative. Yeah, that's how they do us. Okay. And then how to present the data clearly, because I know some folks that want to get into this business. I've done consults of, the paths that I took to get to the current position that I am in my career field. But this is how you present data clearly. And I'm trying to do this in real time with this live stream. Hopefully it's going well for you guys. So your brand, this is my brand. My channel is built around protecting the black male ethnic image and make sure we level set these black relationship conversations in a truthful manner. Okay. So I typically teach you guys to use analogies. That's something that I had to learn in these spaces because I used to speak to certain things that didn't have an analogy to go with it. You see how I just did the 54% of black men not having children and the black women who have ever been married? That will be, a good analogy, okay? So size of the bucket, whole numbers, 3 out of 10 versus 29.3%. I've learned in YouTube, people respond better to 3 out of 10 as opposed to me saying 29.3%, because it makes it a little bit easier. All right. So trends instead of snapshots, comparison bars. You guys see me use those. I started to implement those a little more. Men versus women, race versus race. This actually makes the data digestible when you got pictures. So clear data presentation is definitely essential when you're speaking to the general public, which is what, we do on YouTube. So people relate better to analogies, everyday language, and also whole numbers. So like I said, simplifying percentages into ratios like 3 out of 10, makes the information more, intuitive. So showing visualizations like trend lines or comparison bars, it helps us see the differences instantly instead of using a bunch of words or numbers. So if you or when you, when information is presented clearly, you guys, the audience, can understand and retain it without feeling overwhelmed. So that's why I had to stop to make sure that I wasn't going too fast, because I tried to make this as palatable as possible. All right. Sometimes the live streams ain't going to be as entertaining, but they will be informative. And this is one of them. Okay. All right. So let's continue. And then the power of analogies. I wanted to take some time here for a second. Like I said, the incidents, water filling a bucket, denominator, size of the bucket, marriage market, supply/demand graph, median income, middle seat on the plane. It's simple. So analogies make the data memorable. All right. And then use trends, not single years. So like I said, I like to use the trend analysis, projections, 38 to 40%. We just went over that. So one chart destroys the black men don't marry myth. All right. So once 2027 hits, man, that 40% is going to look pretty good, man. So, hey, that's respectable. So salute to you, black men. So how statistics get manipulated. And this is very important in these spaces. So common tricks. You guys have seen this in real time. Cherry picking, small sample fallacy. I just told you guys about that. When a black man decides that, hey, I don't think marrying or dating black women is working for me, people will respond to him and say, well, have you dated all black women? That will be an example of a small sample fallacy. You have to date all black women to come to the conclusion that black women don't work for you. No. And that goes for black women as well. If you feel that black men ain't working for you, I'm not going to say, well, you need to date all these black women. You need to move to California. What about New York? They different up there. If you determine that black men ain't working for you, please, by all means, leave us the F alone. And the same thing for y'all as black men. If you don't think black women work for you, leave our asses the F alone. So, see here. Misusing percentages, mixing categories, never married plus divorced plus widowed. And a good example would be black women have the biggest increase in X, but sample size was tiny. That's why sample size is very important. And there's several predictable ways people manipulate statistics. Cherry picking, I mean, that's a simple one. It just simply selects numbers or only numbers that support a preconceived narrative. We see this all the time. The small sample fallacy, as I stated, exaggerates the findings from an insufficient group size. A non-representative sample applies results from one unrepresentative group to an entire population. This happens when we talk about the crime statistics for black men. These are things that you guys have heard me talk about before, but now it's a little bit more understanding about it, okay? So, mixed categories, simple, never combined, never married, divorced, separated, widowed. The Pew Research breaks this down thoroughly. So, you can't use that as if it's one group. So, most black women are single, mixes multiple categories to exaggerate the number. So, with this example, 46% of black women currently have never been married. Pew Research breaks this down as well. So that will mean that, what is that? 54% of black women have either been divorced, separated, or widowed. Okay, so that debunks the narrative once again that only that 3 out of 4 black women will never marry. The next part that we're going to discuss is definitely very important because I have some examples of some of the stuff that I've shared in the past so you guys can understand it. But this course that I just taught you guys is simply designed to give you full control over the information that you're going to encounter. Because once you understand the basic definitions, population, denominator, prevalence, incidence, risk ratios, and once you know how to check in time, check sources and time frames, no statistic can be weaponized against you. I promise you. That's why this is so easy for me when I see a narrative and I'm like, yeah, I see what you're trying to do. Because, you know, after this, hopefully you guys will be able to break down any claim instantly, especially the ones used to misrepresent Black men, Black women, in our community as a whole. Okay, so that was my overarching point of doing this, you know, somewhat course, so you guys can understand how to identify certain false narratives about our community. Okay, type of survey research, sample size requirements, and why they're accurate. So I'm going to use some examples. Nationally representative surveys. If you see this, you think NSFG, the National Survey of Family Growth, Pew Research, the Current Population Survey, CPS. You will see that on, you know, on certain websites all the time. So the sample size for nationally representative surveys, it needs to be either between 1,000 or 2,500 nationally, and then 10,000 for subgroup comparison. So when we break down the survey results, you need to make sure this was the sample size. Okay, so remember, like I said, the white guy, he tried to discredit the study by saying it was only 10%. But in certain surveys, it is accepted to have that small amount, which you guys can see with the nationally representative surveys. Okay, so just remember that point, because there's a lot of people that try and discredit your statistics because they say, how many people were surveyed? How many people did they use? Oh no, you can't use that for everybody. No, you absolutely can. Okay, and I'm showing you why. All right, let's continue. All right, so this is a case. This is a use case. So marriage gap: 36% Black men, 29% Black women. Relationship desire differences from the Public Library of Science. I showed you guys this recently. So why this is accurate? Using probability sampling, not convenience. It is weighted to reflect the entire U.S. population. Weighted. Large enough samples to provide stable Black specific estimates. So this is why it's important. Okay? And here's a good example of the stuff that we use. So right here, this was the report that I used to determine that there are a significant amount of Black women that don't want marriage. And this comes from PLOS, Public Library. Let's see here. So gender differences in marriage, romantic involvement, and desire for romantic involvement among older African Americans. So you can see right here across all age groups, African American women are more likely than their male counterparts to report that they neither have nor desire romantic relationships. Okay. So that's why I put out, I was talking about, when I hear Black women talking to, the majority of Black women on social media saying that they don't want marriage. They say that it's like liking to slavery. I've heard this before. And then I've seen a significant of Black women saying that it's embarrassing to have a boyfriend. Y'all seen that article? So you put that together and like, wonder if this translates or correlates with other studies. So what did I do? I started to research it. I started to look at how the trend analysis went for Black women's marriage rates. I saw it was declining. And then I found a couple of studies, i.e. this one, that shows that, it seems like when Black women say I'm single by choice, they are actually telling the truth. Does that make sense? So if I have all these data points, including what I see on social media, and they're saying, I just don't want marriage, that's the truth. So that's why I told you guys, using that as an insult, it's not going to hit the way you think it's going to hit with the majority of Black women, because the majority of them, they don't want marriage, or the marriage has to look a certain way, because there's a lot of Black women that's still in their impression that every other race of women are stay-at-home moms, even though they can look to the left and look to the right and they can see white, Hispanic, Asian women working right next to them. But they still under the impression that the only people that's going 50-50 is Black men. Go figure, right? So if it doesn't look a certain way, then they're not going to accept it. And that's not for you as a Black man to change their mind. If that's how they feel, so be it. Okay? So that's how I came to the conclusion that, I don't think it's an insult. anymore because I don't think they want marriage. All right. There you go. Let's continue. Not all black women, but the majority. So, all right. So federal health and demographic surveys. So, and this will be NSFG again. They do these as well. NHIS, ACS, they do all this. So the sample size minimum for these types of references would be 5,000 to 10,000 per year, and then 20,000 to 100,000 when combined. So the use case would be the 54% of black men have never fathered a child. This is one, and I'm gonna show you guys a great example of why this stuff matters and why it pisses a lot of people off. I got something for you guys, but 54% of black men have never fathered a child. 61% of black women have given birth. 69.3% non-marital birth rate. So why this is accurate? Massive sample sizes with oversampling of black Americans. Face-to-face, federally supervised data collection. And it spans multi-year cycles to ensure low margins of error. I've showed you guys from 2006, 2010, 2015, and 2019 how far these studies go back. So yes, the 54% of black men never fathered a child is absolutely credible, reliable, and accurate. All right. And here's a quick look at that. This is where you could find this information from. So you can see the data source. It'll show you everything that you need to know about this study. And then it shows you right there what the percentages break down to. Okay. Now, this is a good one. Political and election polling. So you can use examples like Gallup, IPSOS, and then YouGov. The sample size for them, their threshold, the minimum is 600 to 1,500 nationally, and then 300 to 600 statewide. Okay. The use case would be the passport statistics that I use. So most black men have passports, but are not passport bros. Okay. So why this is accurate? Random digit dialing. I'm going to explain that in a second. Plus online probability samples, weights adjust for race, income, gender, and region, and then error margins published and transparent. So they show you if they had any issues with gathering the data on these sites. And I put this together. You guys seen this before. I was breaking down the population size, 340 million. There are 169 million valid passports in circulation. Well, that was in 2024. I'm pretty sure it's increased a little bit. And then our population at the time was 48.2 million. Then black / African Americans with passports is 16.4 million. That's 34%. And then most black men are staying right here. And this is why I asked the question, how do they find wives? Okay. I was just using this as an example. Let's continue. All right. So market research surveys, an example would be consumer behavior. When we start talking about debt, credit card usage, this is what these studies are for. Brand studies, the sample size minimum would be 200 to 1,000 respondents. And this is, the use case would be measuring sentiment when viral NBA photos drop. And this is how I track how black women react versus other groups. You always talk, you hear about the NBA draft or when the Indiana Pacers take their girlfriends and wives on the trip. All of them have white wives. This is what you would use this for. So this is designed to measure real-time reactions. Ideal for behavior trends, not national conclusions. Okay, so just this one particular topic. If I share a picture, or not me, if the Indiana Pacers share a picture of all of their white wives going with their black husbands on a plane, if I was to break this down and I look in the comment section and I count the positive comments from black women and the negative comments from black women, I would need to have a threshold of respondents between 200 and 1,000. If it's more, great. Okay. But I'm only required to get about 200. So if I can count 200 bad comments and, let's say 100 good comments. Then there's some correlation there. There's some causation or whatever, right? I can say, oh, okay. So that means that the majority of black women under this post are about this topic. They don't like that. Now, how you would expand that is if you go to another page where you got Lawrence from Insecure, right? When he got married, y'all remember this situation? He got married to a white woman or whatever she is, and he had to cut off his comments because he had so many negative ones from black women. Okay? So before he cut off the comments, if I was a count, like, oh, okay, cool. This is common on this particular case. And then I go to another case. Ghost from Power. His wife is white. I look in his comments. Oh man, it's another 250 black women that don't like this. So I got 3 studies that I can put together, which would be considered a trend analysis. This is a trend. So now we can start extrapolating that out to a national, representation of the population of black women and their thoughts on interracial marriage, which would be no good for black men. Now, how would I compare that? Okay, think about what I just said. So we just determined that black women don't like black men marrying out. That's already, for example, this is a, example. I already determined that. So how I would compare that, okay, I want to take this study a little bit deeper. Do black women like when black women marry white men or marry out? Let's do a study on that. So then you would have to go to who's a popular interracial couple? Who can we use? White man, black woman. Who would be what's a good example? I would say Gabby Sidibe, Serena Williams. Who else out there? Yeah, okay, Serena. I was gonna say Jody Smith Turner, but she got divorced to Pacey. I like both of them, by the way. Pacey, he always been cool. I call him Pacey because of Dawson's Creek. He always been cool with me. You know what I'm saying? And Jody Smith Turner, she did an amazing job in the movie Tron. Have y'all seen that? That was a great movie. The visuals, I'm going on a tangent, but yeah. So y'all know what I'm talking about. Who else? Oh, Chili from is TLC. Is she still with, was it Joey? Or the dude? I forgot. But yeah, I'm talking about married couples. But yeah, so if I was to, compare that, black women's thoughts of them marrying out, do they feel the same way as they do with black men? And then you would get those couples, you would look at the comments. Oh, this is positive. This is positive. So now I got 250 positive comments and I got 50 negative ones. So that would mean that black women don't mind when they marry out. They just don't like it when black men marry out. So now you have a comparison. And then you can start to extrapolate that out to a nationally representative survey. And then you can come to a conclusion that black women don't like when black men marry out, but they don't mind it when black women marry out. That's how you build a survey, a study, a case study. Okay? That's the blueprint. All right. It's very simple. So Tika Sumter, she's married to a white guy. Tika Sumter is beautiful. She can do what she wants. But yeah. And Jody Smith Turner is beautiful. Yeah. But none of these women, Tika Sumter and Jody Smith Turner, I've never heard them say anything crazy about black men. They just found a man and they married him. So, and that's the majority of interracially married couples. They not on swirl sites like what is it, the girl's name? Danish Deception chick? Yeah, they not on swirl sites. They just married, man. It is what it is. So, but Tika Sumter is beautiful. So let's see here. All right, so let me show you guys something real quick. All right, so this is an example that I used. This is what led me to put this together. Okay, so I was just showing black women like, hey man, y'all don't want to be married. So this would be example. Shout out to Dr. Umar. All right. Yo. Let's see here. So an academic social science survey. So this will be university psychology and sociology studies. So a basic sample size would be 100 to 300, 500 to 2,000 would be advanced, and then 5,000 plus for national level conclusions. So you see, when you do national level conclusions, it has to be more people involved. So a use case would be proving Black women are more likely to say they do not desire a relationship, showing differences between preferences versus availability. And why this is accurate? Because it's peer reviewed for one. Your peers review, see if you accurate and credible. Then methods and data sets are publicly available, which are all included in these type of social science surveys. And then replicable across multiple samples and universities. All right. And matter of fact, damn, I thought I had my book. Damn. It was a Malcolm Gladwell book that I read a while ago. It's called Talking to Strangers. He actually pulled a bunch of social science surveys in regards to the grape culture in college. That was actually an amazing book, by the way. So Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's one of my favorite authors, by the way. And here we go again. I'm going on a tangent. Go get that book. Talking with or Talking to Strangers. I got another book of his. Blink. Where is it? It's somewhere around here. Oh, I think I got it on the bookshelf. But yeah, check out Malcolm Gladwell. I'm always encouraging y'all to read. All right. And then here's for this one right here. This will be an example of one of those studies. All right. We just talked about this. Now, qualitative research examples, focus group interviews, panel shows. This is important for my panel show folks. So you need about 10 to 50 participants. So this is why, and the reason why I use panel shows is because typically they'll bring up 10 people. There'll be 10 people on the screen. So you guys can actually determine from a panel show if the thoughts are true amongst the majority of people on the show. Do you know that? So yeah. So hold on, let me show you out. So use case, showing how Black women and certain white men repeat the same false narratives about Black men. And then what we did, we analyzed shows like Ricky Lake and Modern Relationship Panels. Why this is acceptable. Not meant to represent the whole population, but to reveal patterns in thinking. When the same narrative appears across decades, they show consistency, not coincidence. And this also adds context to quantitative data. And that's why over the past couple of 2 months or so, I've been going back looking at, the historical data so we can have a stronger case to say that, yes, some of these same talking points that Black women have, I've heard white men share the same ones. And I don't think a lot of Black women understand that. And I think that's how that name became popular in these male-centric spaces. The Ku Klux Keisha or KK Keisha or something like that. I think that was derived from a lot of Black men noticing that, hey man, you just quoted the same study as this, this guy that, this white guy that dislikes us. So now you start putting these things together. You guys seen the shows, you look at the panel shows, you're like, oh shit, this ain't, this ain't a coincidence. This is a consistent pattern. Make sense? All right. Ricky Lake. All right. And then this one right here. I wanted to use this for an example because, hold on. Coincidence. This is good. Coincidence / online polls. So IG polls, YouTube polls, TikTok, X. So these are not scientific, guys. All right. So use case will be showing 1 in 3 Black men are gay, jailed, or missing. You saw that on that old Ricky Lake show. And then Black men have the highest interracial divorce rates. Not true. Black women divorce white men the least. Not true. Why this data is not accurate. Self-selected responses. Non-probability. Cannot be generalized to anyone beyond the voters. Useful only to identify viral sentiment, not reality. Now, I saw this page, Ask a Black Man, black marriage rates increased over the past decade, increased 20% over the past decade, the first sustained rise in 40 years. So this is absolutely not true. They just, I'm calling them out because they could have just put the real information out there. But what they did, they mixed up some of the statistics to get to this point. So black marriage rates hit their lowest point around 2010 when only about 29% of black adults were married. So that 29%, they probably got that from black women's marriage rate currently. Since then, the rate has climbed steadily, rising to roughly 33 to 35% by 2023. That shift represents a meaningful reversal after decades of decline. But this 20% is nowhere to be found. Other indicators, the black men, the 36% of black men who are married, that's true, okay? But that's for 2022. What they said is the share of black men who are married has grown from about 36% in 2010 to around 41% today. So go back to when they said the marriage rate was 29% in 2010. So they just messed up the numbers, and that's why you use that 60-second fact check, because you can see the errors in it if you just read it. So 36, and then they said it's 41% today. We have not hit 41% just yet. All right. And then they said black women who are married has risen from roughly 26% to over 30%. That's not entirely true. It's close. It's 29%. Okay. So with the number, couples ages 25 to 34 who are married increasing by nearly 10% shows its low point 13 years ago. So yeah. So and again, what are we supposed to do here? When you see a study like this or somebody putting something out there like this, like, man, well, what populations did you study? Where are the references? What did you cite? You just can't say sociologists emphasize. Where are the reference links? What did you look at to determine? These are the things that you guys have to ask yourselves when you read these types of things. Okay. And I know it looks bad that I'm kind of breaking apart something that's positive for the black community, but there's a better way to put positive things without lying to the black community. Okay. Does that make sense? You could talk about the marriage rates increasing, but you have to do it, with the right numbers. There you go. Okay. Now this one you guys are going to enjoy. Okay. And this is probably the most important slides that you guys will want to, you're going to pay attention to. So where the National Survey of Family Growth actually fits. So Federal Health and Demographic Survey, this is what it's for. So the sample size for that, black men, 54% of black men have never fathered children. The sample size was 21,441 face-to-face interview. So your use case would be debunking absent father narratives for that comedian, showing births concentrate among a small subset of men, which we've already known, demonstrating most black men have 0 children. And the reason why this study is accurate is because it was conducted by the NCHS, same institution as the CDC, large multi-year sample improved stability. And it also oversampled black Americans for precision. And it also uses validated fertility and fatherhood questions across 50 years. All right. The reason why this is important and for you guys to understand is because when the black community sees stuff like this and it paints black men in a positive light, this type of stuff even rubs black demographics the wrong way. Because remember, I want to tell y'all something about this. They were the first ones to put this graph together, which makes it very, very easy to read. They actually even cited where the information comes from, the NSFG from the CDC. But this year, when I went to go check the study, I needed to get the picture for a video that I was doing. They had to put a caveat to that. You see this? There are some important factors to keep in mind about the black community's family patterns. Note, February 19th, 2025, they put this note in there for black women to say, these statistics reflect self-reported data from the National Survey of Family Growth. Research has shown that men are more likely to underreport children they do not live with. Why did they put that in there? Okay, which may result in some underestimation of fatherhood rates. So it lets black women question the fact, well, this stuff isn't true because, you know, black demographics, they said that there is an underestimation because black men underreport the children. So they say the data is weighted for accuracy, but no survey is perfect. These trends should be used to inform discussions, not to assign blame. And that last little part, that's how I knew that they were influenced by a lot of black women, or they saw some of the social media discourse. So it's like, well, let me go ahead and stick up for black women and go ahead and give them, you know, shoot them some bail by saying not to assign blame. Because when you look at this, now black men can confidently say, hold on now, we're not the ones having all these children. And that is, you know, and that debunks or challenges the narrative that has been in the black community for decades. Because 54% of black men ain't never had children. So only 46% of black men have ever fathered a child. And we know that 36% of black men are actually married. So there's only a small percentage of black men who are having all these children out of wedlock with black women. But the reason why they did that is so if you in the chat, if you sent this to a black woman and you said, nah, hold on, this not, you know, what you're saying is not true. Here, Black Demographics says that 54% of black men have never had a child. She goes to the site that you gave her, you give her the hyperlink, she clicks it, she looks at that picture. And then she'll look right under that picture and she'll read that paragraph and say, hold on, you quoting the study where they saying it's underreported. Y'all don't even report all your children. So that number could be what? Higher. You see how that works? So that's how you got to even watch these types of sites, because a lot of people have a vested interest in making black men look bad, even though everybody has referenced Black Demographics. But this was actually low of them to do, because you guys just learned that the study that they're actually talking about, hold on, it's accurate. It's absolutely accurate. Every point says it's accurate. So there was no need for them to put that in there. And that's why black men, you got to be on your toes, because you will get duped even by some of these sites, and you got to do the research for yourselves. I say that all the time. So that's a perfect example of how some groups are dedicated to making it seem like black men are less than. But you guys have the real information, so you know the information is true. You can go to the CDC website and don't use blackdemographics.com for this actual study, because they tried to sneak that in there this year, but I caught it. Caught your ass. So here, let's go over the key takeaways. So the more rigorous the survey, the more powerful the truth becomes. Your work is accurate because it relies on probability samples, federal data, peer-reviewed methods, transparent sample sizes. This is why your numbers consistently destroy viral myths about black men, black women, and black relationships. Okay, so when you guys do your research, you have all the knowledge that you need to determine if a statistic, fact, reference is true. And just try and put this into practice when you're on social media the next time and you see something pop up. You question it a little bit more. That's all I'm asking you guys to do. Is just question. Man, hold on. You missing some key parts about this. And then you can start asking questions, or you can do the research for yourself. Okay? And this could be done in any spaces, you know, live streams. You can ask the question, where you get this from? What was the population size? How many people were surveyed? How were they surveyed? So yeah, I'm telling y'all in the sticklers, statistical sticklers. So yeah, so that's all I got for you guys, man. Oh my goodness. So